What's going on YouTube? It's Tom here. We're back with another video today. Today's video is going to be a little bit more in-depth than I normally do. We're probably going to be talking close to an hour, I'm going to have to assume. This is going to be a long one. With me today I have Brian from Transparent Knives. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, what's up?
So Brian approached me, I don't know, it's been probably a month or so ago, right? About
Yeah, maybe even 2 months. I don't know. It's been a while, but
Yeah. When Brian first got into the whole 940 reblade project, basically, he kind of started doing his own heat treat. And he was working on making it feasible to do his own heat treat for these 940 reblades. And he basically approached me and wanted me to test a whole bunch of different protocols and see what performed best. And here we are after I tested all 10. So it took a long time, a lot of sharpening, a lot of testing, as we'll get into, but. Before we get into all the results and everything, for everyone who's not, super involved with this kind of stuff, we're going to have Brian explain a little bit of heat treating here at the very beginning.
yeah. So we're just gonna go over the very basics, just like the process that I go through, and the reason for this is to explain basically like why I manipulated the variables that I did for each test blade. So starting off, obviously, I purchased the steel from a manufacturer or supplier. That's what every maker or company does. And the steel arrives in an annealed state, which means it's basically soft. And the microstructure of annealed steel is very simple. It's basically just ferrite and carbides. So ferrite is basically the iron, and carbides are the carbon and the other elements. So the important thing to know is just it's all about microstructure, right? Because you're heating the steel, you're not changing what elements are in the steel, obviously. The elements are the elements. What you're changing is the structure of those elements and how they, relate to each other. So I'm not going to go over what the structures are, obviously, but just suffice it to say that they're different, right? And you're changing those structures. So and then obviously carbides are binary compounds of carbon with other elements that are in the composition of the steel. So that's the breakdown. And all I'm doing on the heat treating side is I take that annealed steel and I austenitize it, which means I heat it to a very high temperature, hold it at that temperature for a specific amount of time, and then I cool it down at a certain rate using a quenching method, either oil or plate quenching or whatever is appropriate for that steel. Then typically you want to do cryo because there can be retained austenite. So that's just like, let's say that you're converting the austenite to a martensitic structure and there's some leftover austenite. You want to make sure that you can get all that retained austenite out of the way. You want to make sure that you do cryo. So I pretty much did cryo for every single one of these protocols. I'll explain why I didn't do cryo on one of the protocols, and then when we get there. And then the last thing to note is the factors that I'm trying to test are so things like does higher HRC affect edge retention? Does grain growth affect edge retention? All those things are things that were tested to the extent that I could fit into 10 blades. Obviously, more blades means you can test more variables, but yeah, that's the limit pretty much.
Exactly. So you ready to go ahead and get started with the results here?
Yep. I'm excited because Tom has not told me them. He's been hyping me up for them, but yeah. I don't know what the results are either. So
the only people that know some of the results right now is Gerald knows a couple. Mm-hmm. And I talked with Roman a little bit, and I shared the whole thing with Roman to discuss some things with him. So,
yeah.
So the first blade was 61.5. So the notes I have here for sharpening was that I struggled to deburr it off the stones, but it's dropped well, so that burr popped off pretty easily on the strops, which is pretty common. Even if a steel is struggling to deburr off stones, normally that 16 micron CBN rips the burr right off pretty easily. Mm-hmm. Of note, when I start to see that normally means there's too much retained austenite. Mm-hmm. When you're kind of struggling to deburr, it's a little bit gummy.
Right.
This one, I did measure the behind the edge thickness on everything. This one was 7 thousandths behind the edge, and the total result off of number one was 213.88 feet. So pretty average with what you're seeing with a lot of the production M390 right now.
Right.
Very
so
similar.
that falls in line with what I would predict would happen. And I'll go over why I tried this protocol even though I thought the result wouldn't be good. Basically, so everyone knows that there are three analogs, there's three types of M390, you could say. They're all analogs of each other. You have M390, 20CV, and 204P, with very slight differences in composition. But if you look at the data sheets for how to heat treat these steels, the companies actually suggest very different things. So I thought that was very curious, right? Because I was like, given how similar they are, I felt like there should be more similarity in the suggested guidelines for, I guess how you should heat treat. But my thought process was, well, they can't all be right, but probably some of them are right about some things and some are wrong about others. One of the things that I thought was weird was Carpenter suggests a soak time of 30 minutes, which is very long. Like if you think about like the type of temperature you take M390 to or 204P to, it's a very high temperature. To soak for 30 minutes is a very, very long time. Like I'm thinking that's just too long, right, in my head when I read that. Whereas Bowler for M390 was suggesting a little even below the temperature I heat treated this to only do 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow. So
that was a substantial difference. So for this one, I tried the 30 minutes. I did a high austenitizing temperature. So the higher you austenize that, temperature you austenize that, the more possibility there is for retained austenite. And so I still did cryo for this one. And I also did what's called I attempted secondary hardening. So that's when you temper at a very high temperature. Normally, when the higher you temper at, the lower your HRC gets and the lower your wear resistance gets, and it gets tougher. But for certain high alloy steels like M390, there's actually 2 curves. And the second curve is where it starts to go up again, even though you had a very high temperature. So if I did 700 degrees Fahrenheit for tempering, it's probably going to be very soft. But if I go up to 1,000, it's going to get slightly harder again. So, and the theory behind it is a lot of these companies that make the seals are saying when you do secondary hardening, even if you get a lower HRC, it might have more wear resistance. So that's what I was testing here. The 2 things I tested with this protocol is higher soak time okay, and is that secondary hardening process actually, as good as people say it is. Now, if I had to blame something for this protocol, just looking at, an isolated instance, I'm going to say probably the soak time was one of the contributing factors to poor performance. I think it's just too long. I think 30 minutes is just too long if you're going for a high temperature for austenitizing. That would be my guess, just based on the one case that I know right now on why that performed poorly.
Out of all 10, this was probably the worst one to sharpen. Like it wasn't difficult to sharpen, just the deburring thing was kind of annoying. And something to note, that performs almost exactly how my Anthem at 57 HRC did. So that tells you probably how much retained austenite is there.
Right, and I think that some companies might be they I don't know how they pick which data sheet they follow, but maybe they picked one where they're like, okay, I'm supposed to soak for 30 minutes. The company says soak for 30 minutes. So and you'll get the result, right, of like possibly maybe 60 HRC, and you think, oh, it's good, it's in spec, but you still might get a bad result because I don't think I think it's too long of a soak time. I think I don't know if grain growth is the reason why it performs worse, but it's a possibility.
Yeah,
there's a lot of voodoo behind grain growth and the effects of it, so I don't really know. And if you read on blade forums what people's theories are, they're all different. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's only a couple people that I listen to as far as the authority on heat treat.
As far as grain goes, yeah. So
all right, and then I did take USB microscope pictures of all these edges after I was done testing them, looking for the area with the most damage, so we can kind of see where everything's at. So here, I'm gonna pull that up. Pull up here, screen 1. You should be able to see that.
Oh, yeah.
So everything looks pretty good, except for I have one small spot here where it chipped, and one small spot here where it microchipped. But that's really it. You basically just get blunting, which is, ideally that's pretty much what you want. You don't want chips, you don't want rolls, just straight up blunting. Basically,
is that easier to resharpen or something?
Basically, it's a slow widening of the apex. That's how you want it to break down.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
It gets to the point where that apex isn't acute enough to cut.
Yeah, see, Tom knows all about the sharpening and stuff. I don't even have a microscope, so I can't check stuff. I do want one day, but
they're pretty cheap. You should definitely pick one up. But this was a cheapie, but you can get some real nice ones too. All right, blade number 2 was 62.5 HRC, which would be the hardest knife I had tested in an M390 family steel up to this point. The only note I have on here is it deburred well, so it must have sharpened just fine. It did, everything else well. Behind the edge measurement on this was 14.5 thousandths, and the total distance cut was 304.5 feet. So it falls in line with some of the higher end M390 stuff I tested. That Custom Knife Factory Morph, the Holt Spectre. It's a little bit less than those, but it's right in line.
Right. Okay, so this one was the most out there one, I would say, of the heat treats. So this one was, I would say, max possible austenitizing temperature. If I've actually tried to go higher than this, and I didn't even send those blades to Tom because they came back like 54 HRC. Like they were just not going to work. So because there's a limit. You can't just go higher and higher temperature and expect higher and higher HRC. There's a limit, of course. So this is basically at the limit of where you can go. I've talked to Roman about this actually. Like he agrees this is pretty much the limit of where you can go with austenitizing temperature. And this one also had the long soak time, which should have hurt it really. Should have hurt it a significant bit. So if I did this exact same protocol, but with a lower soak time, it's possible that there's significant increase in performance. So I'll note that. One thing that is different about this protocol and all the other ones, which might have helped with deburring well, is it's been triple tempered. So if I triple tempered it at standard tempering temperatures, which is about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So the triple temper probably helped significantly with the problem in the first protocol where there's a lot of retained austenite. Triple tempering helps a lot with that. Obviously, you temper once, you try to convert most stuff to martensite, then you temper again. You try to make sure that there's no untempered martensite. But the triple temper, some people say it's not necessary. Some people say it is. I think it's possible that when you're going at the max austenitizing temperature and you have that much possibility of retained austenite, triple temper could actually have helped a lot. So, because that's the main difference between this and the previous one.
Awesome. So that was pretty good stuff, honestly. I was pretty happy with that result. I know that's not what you're shooting for, though. You're not shooting for pretty good. You're shooting for excellent.
Right.
But I was pretty happy with that overall up until this point. Let me pull up a picture of the edge.
Yeah, I like how my face just pops up for a second.
I know, when I start to share. This edge experienced some real small microchipping. You can kind of see it along through here. Another small one here. And like a pretty decent sized section there.
See, what I'm curious to see later on as we get further with these protocols is with the other protocols that were at the same austenitizing temperature, but with different, processes after, if we see that same microchipping.
Gotcha. Some of these were really hard to find a section that actually had any chipping in them. It was just interesting to see. They all looked, if you're not paying close attention, they all look very similar. But some of them do have a little bit more and a little bit bigger chipping than others.
Yeah.
All right. On to protocol number 3. I was excited for this one. This one was 64.9. So as you guys know, high HRC gets all of us excited, right? Seeing a number that big next to an M390 analog gets the blood flowing. Normally, what everyone's been saying is 62 to 64 is the acceptable range for M390. Seeing it at 64.9, I had high hopes, but I wasn't totally sure of it because it's outside of that range that's generally talked about.
Right, and we'll see with the next blade too. Like it's interesting. Yeah.
Yes. So this one I have here in the notes is that it definitely felt hard and it deburred excellent. So that is a characteristic of a super hard steel from what I've found in my sharpening. The harder it gets, the easier it deburrs. It forms a smaller burr, it forms a more brittle burr, and it pops off easier. That knife itself was really, really sharp right off the stones. For use, it didn't really need any stropping, but to keep everything consistent, I stropped it. That one was 12.5 thousandths behind the edge, and that one cut 288.19 feet. And you guys might be wondering, well, that just cut, like 16 feet less than the knife that was 2.5 points softer.
All right, yeah. So the important things to note here are, one, this is the last protocol. So there were 3 protocols where I did the long soak time. This is the last protocol of the 10 where I did a long soak time. And I think that was super damaging with the method that followed after. So the reason is you have this long soak time, right? And what happens with long soak time? Well, as you're austenitizing, basically the grains are expanding, right? And larger grains almost swallow smaller grains. And it's bad for the steel. Everyone knows it's bad for toughness, right? We don't know scientifically, we don't have conclusive results on how it affects edge retention or to what extent it affects edge retention. But this was followed by cryo and then a very low tempering temperature. And obviously a low tempering temperature is going to convert less of that retained austenite. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I do know that the only thing that I changed between this and the next few ones, which performed a lot better, is that soak time. So it actually has to have a huge effect, like much bigger than people give credit for. Because if you look up protocols online, how do I heat treat M390? I promise you right now, most people are giving you terrible soak times. And when you ask them, well, how did you come up with that soak time? People are like, oh, it's just put in put in for a few minutes, and just whatever, half an hour, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not fine. You lose so much performance. Like just 15 minutes more, it's like, it's like that. So that's a huge thing. So, but that's pretty much the only difference between this and the better performing ones.
I would have to assume that the grain structure in this was really large. So from some research from Roman and Triple B, they're both emphasizing small grain structure. The smaller and more fine and the more homogeneous you can get it throughout the steel, the more edge retention you get.
Right, and some people say it has no effect if you read on blade forums. Some people say that they're like, well, a grain is this big and the edge is this big, so it can't affect. And I'm like, that's not exactly how it works. And also, there's a difference between grain size and carbide size, which is a huge difference.
Yes.
So that's another thing I think people get confused sometimes. But in this case, I would say grain size was probably a huge factor. I'd be interested. I'd probably I don't have the microscope, but if you want to snap that blade or something and just check the grain with the microscope or whatever you want to do, I mean, I'd be okay with that.
That'd be cool to see. I'm very interested in what went wrong with that one. I don't know if, like you said, the grain size, or maybe it was even carbide size, because if you get that carbide size too big, you can really suffer in performance.
Exactly. So I know what changed in protocol, but I don't know exactly what happened in microstructure because I can't see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pull up the USB microscope picture here. So this one actually retained its edge really, really well, like the form of it. We got a little bit of some waviness going on down here. That little piece that you see sticking off, I think, is just a piece of dust that normally happens, or dirt or whatever. I see it's one small chip down here at the very end too.
Yeah.
But not too bad, actually. I think that edge just kind of crumbled as it got towards the end of its life. It seemed like it went from performing well to just falling flat on his face.
I feel like it was just about to be good, and then
Exactly. I had high hopes for it, and then I tallied up the numbers. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't great. So
yeah.
All right, the next one though, we've got blade number 4 here. That is also 64.9.
And that's what makes it interesting.
Yes, very interesting. I have in the notes, feels hard and it deburred great. Very similar to the other one. This one was 9.5 thousandths behind the edge. And believe it or not, we cut 482.13 feet on that one. So almost a 200-foot increase. One thing I do want to note here is even though I took all these behind the edge measurements, behind the edge thickness plays almost 0 part in edge retention. If it does, on cardboard anyhow, if it does, it's negligible. Like probably less than a percent.
As in, we can't find a statistically significant difference.
If there is a difference, it's probably less than 1% or 2%, which is you can basically throw that away.
Yeah.
That could be a difference in the cardboard makeup, honestly. So, I mean, I was really impressed with this protocol. This is the first one that gave me some hope that there were some real good ones in here.
Oh, yeah. There's, I'm based on my, just the pattern of what we're seeing. Number 6 blade should do the best, but I don't know. We'll see. But we'll see. So what changed with this one is I used actually a standard austenitizing temperature. So what they recommend. The only thing that I changed was soak time and tempering temperature. So what I went for is I basically did the same thought process of, okay, if I do a decently high, because this is what's considered to be high by Bowler and other companies. If I do a pretty high austenitizing temperature, low tempering temperature, And in other words, what people usually call like, oh, well, doesn't that make it brittle, right? And we'll see through that. But and obviously cryo, and that's the very simple process leads to a pretty good result. Like this should be achievable by any maker, easy. If you just like, if any maker who does their own M390 just looks at the data sheets, thinks about the numbers like provided from Bowler and Carpenter and just compares them and goes, okay, what's logically like some good numbers to use, they would be able to get the same result I just did, in my opinion.
For how much M390 is hyped up, I think this is the like baseline performance you should be shooting for.
Yeah, and I think it's achievable. I think any maker who just has even the most basic knowledge of heat treating, because I've been making knives for 8 months, and I've been heat treating for like less than that, right? It was not hard to come up with this. So it was literally just logic. Like you look at the pattern of the graph and you go, I think about here that temperature looks good. Like it's going to be pretty solid probably. Yeah. So
basically, like 400 plus feet should be very easily attainable by pretty much any maker if they care enough.
Yes. Oh yeah, they have to care. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the first one that really gave me a lot of hope out of all of these. It did really, really well. It was one of those knives that was really annoying, and I kind of wished it stopped cutting because it just kept going and going and going. When I thought it was done, it'd start to like catch a little bit on the paper, and I wipe off the blade, and I'm like, oh, it's not even close yet.
Yeah.
It was really good. As a tester, that's a cool thing to see. All right, let's pull up the graph here.
I'd say especially for a steel that you get disappointed by all the time.
Exactly. We had a couple other pieces of dust hanging onto the edge here, so kind of ignore those. But we do have a decent chunk missing here, and a little bit of waviness down here. You can see one small chip right there. Basically, what you're looking for in these is a pretty clean line, like right here. That's it retaining its apex well.
Yeah, that'd be the dream if you got that super high edge retention and perfect line.
Yep, absolutely. This stuff is actually, like, this blade is actually still very serviceable when I was done with it. Like, you could still you could make it cut paper. It just didn't have the bite anymore.
Right.
That one was impressive. Let's talk about the fun heat treat, though.
Yes. Yes.
We got number 5 here. I was looking forward to number 5 after testing number 4 because it's 60.5, and I was like, sweet, it's gonna, not gonna suck, but it's not gonna kill my hand. In my notes here I have it felt softer, it was easier to sharpen, and it deburred well. Pretty standard stuff. It felt like just any other M390 that's out there. Pretty much what I've experienced with everything else.
Yeah.
14.5 thousandths behind the edge. And this one cut 164.94 feet, which is absolutely garbage. That is like S30V.
S30V.
That is bad S30V, actually. I wasn't surprised by this. I mean, I was a little surprised because at 60.5, that's still a good number when you see that for M390. You're like, yeah, that's acceptable. But then you see this and you're like, no, not really.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So this is very interesting. This is probably the most interesting protocol, not in terms of a protocol I would use ever, but in terms of the theory behind heat treating. So I didn't tell Tom this until after he had finished all the cut testing. But what I said is, there was a video on YouTube. There's multiple videos from Michael Emmer and the Fair & Forge brothers on a heat treating process they say is really good, that makes use of secondary hardening. They claim it has the highest wear resistance and the highest impact resistance of M390 at the same time, which is of course impossible. But that aside, I thought to myself, you know what? They're making a big claim here, and I didn't look for that video myself. Someone in the Discord showed it to me and said, "Hey, is any of this stuff they're saying true?" And I was like, it's pretty much impossible that what they're saying is true, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and try it out, right, and have Tom test it. So I followed pretty much exactly what their protocol was, right? Because Emler made a video on how to do it. What he said was slow heat to 2200, soak 10 minutes, plate quench, no cryo, slow heat to 1000 degrees for tempering temperature, 2 times soak for 2 hours each. So that was I followed that exactly. And this is the result we got. Now, he might have Rockwell tested it, maybe not, and saw it 60.5 and thought, well, that's in spec, right?
Right.
But as we know, the way that you hit a number, like we saw it just now, 64.9, right? Same number, huge, completely different results, right? So how you get there matters. And if you think about the theory behind heat treating a high alloy steel, this doesn't really make sense. Like cryo, you have to basically do it for M390. That's not really an optional thing. And the fact that there's no cryo in the recommended process, that automatically made it seem like, no, there's no way this is going to be the best, you know? Right. It just wasn't possible. But cryo objectively just increases toughness, for example. So how could you get the highest toughness without cryo, as well as the highest edge retention? You know what I mean? Like it was so impossible to me that I had to try it. You know, just because he said it very confidently. Like I looked at Elliot's face when he said it into the camera, and I was like, he seems really confident about this. It didn't work. So that's the story behind this one. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting look into why a lot of heat treats are bad. I think people are misunderstanding how to heat treat M390. A lot of companies are, and they're also getting advice from, you know, people who sometimes overestimate how much they know about this.
Yeah.
Because I don't claim to know a lot about it, but I do know some basic facts, right? Like, you know, like you can just see it in data sheets that Bowler provides. Like cryo really does help. You can see the difference in increases in hardness. So, but it's good to know that I was correct in thinking it wouldn't work.
I'm really glad you threw this one in here and didn't tell me beforehand.
Yeah.
I like that I had no idea. I couldn't, you know, make it perform bad just because it's Ferrum Forge.
Yeah. I know. I knew you wouldn't want to know beforehand. Like I kind of see. I was also thinking of throwing in. I told you this one. I was thinking of throwing in what I think is the Lion Steel heat treat.
Okay.
But it was just like at that point I was just like, it's 57 HRC. Like I don't even want to waste Tom's time. Yeah. So.
Oh, that would have been another knife to test. Oh man.
Yeah.
My poor hands.
Not a long test though. Not for that one. Probably.
No. It probably would have done 70 feet like they normally do. Anyhow, let's go ahead and look at the picture for that one. Let's see here. This one actually held its apex really well.
Mm-hmm. Clean, but not really. It's not going to hold, or it's not going to be able to cut very well. Like
right. It
won't degrade, but yeah.
It just kind of flattened at the apex. You could see like a bunch of shiny spots where that edge just kind of just smushed.
Yeah.
And that is obviously not what we want for edge retention. All right, number 6. This is another one that I was super excited for. When Brian gave me the list of everything of all the HRC readings for these 10 knives, this one stood out. Obviously,
it's the highest one.
It's the highest.
Yeah.
It's the highest. These range anywhere from 60.5, that was the low one, up to this one, 65.2.
Right.
I was interested in. It's cool that these were being tested back to back too, because I tested everything in order.
Mm-hmm.
Brian had all the blades numbered for me, so I respected his wish and just tested them all in order.
Yeah.
If it were up to me, I would have tested this one first.
Right. and it's cooler this way, I must say.
Exactly. This one I have the most difficult to sharpen so far. I don't know if that was because the bevels weren't ground quite as close as some of the other ones were quite yet, or if it's just because of the fact that it was so hard.
Yeah, it could be both. Yeah.
Because most of them were pretty consistent with how much material I had to remove to put an edge on. I don't know if we mentioned that at all. There was no edge on these before I received them.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And no fatigue steel because Brian is very meticulous about the way that he grinds and make sure everything stays cool. So that's why I didn't spend time putting 4, 5, 6 edges on each one. Basically enough to raise a burr, toss it back and forth a couple of times, and then test. Anyhow, I have the edge came up super crisp, and it was just sticky sharp off the stones. This was the sharpest one off the stones. Very, very happy with how this one sharpened and everything. Very refined edge, which is a good sign. Good sign of refined grain structure more than likely. And very little retained austenite. The burr popped off easily. This was a really nice one to sharpen. I would totally take this as a daily user.
Let's see that number.
14.5 thousandths behind the edge, just like a lot of them are here.
Yeah.
And this is the first M390 knife to crack 500 feet.
Ooh, okay.
507.5.
507.5.
Yep.
That's pretty high.
That was awesome.
I was really hoping that I'd get over 500 when I went into this. That was my goal.
That was awesome. Very impressed with that one. What was that kind of your thought process behind this one?
So this one was I basically took the ferrum forge approach, right? The idea at the beginning of their approach, and then I added my flavor to it. And the slight difference apparently made a very big difference.
Yeah.
So I took basically, the idea of a high austenizing temperature. I agree with their thought process there, that a high austenizing temperature is necessary to unlock the full potential of the steel. That they're completely right, I think, in saying that. I think that, the soak time is one thing that they were, like I said, a lot of people are missing out on that soak time. That is probably, strangely enough, like the thing that seems to impact things the most, right? Because even if you have like a high HRC, if you have a crap soak time, it seems like it just doesn't perform well. Other thing, obviously, you have to include cryo. So that's one change I made from the ferrum forge thing, is you have to do cryo pretty much. You can do that high austenizing temperature, but it's actually going to hurt you more if you don't do cryo. And then lastly is low tempering temperature. So I think low tempering temperature is pretty, like, people are scared to do it, right? People are scared to try it.
Yeah.
Because they're scared that it's going to be too brittle. They're scared that, blade's going to like crack or something. They're scared that, because, there's a lot of stress that goes on a blade when you're converting to austenite and then to martensite, right? When you do that quench, that's why people usually temper or cryo immediately. If you quench a blade and just leave it out, you can come and overnight and come back, it might be cracked. Like, that's how much stress is going on in the blade. So people are scared of, sometimes people do snap tempers and stuff too, just to make sure the blade is stable enough that it won't crack. So people are scared to, for certain steels, they don't want to waste money, so they don't try lower temps for tempering. Obviously, I don't care. I just want to get the best result. So if I lose a blade, I lose a blade, and I learn something, right? So I went very aggressive with the tempering here. I did not note, one thing to note, I did not triple temper this. I want to try the same protocol, triple temper it, send it to you, and see if that does even better. It's possible. Test it again. So, but yeah.
I'll test it
but
again.
Even this, I'm very happy with that already.
I'll just make sure that I have plenty of cardboard on hand. Oh, another thing I wanted to say is I want to thank all the Patreon supporters for funding all of this cardboard. We'll get to the total number of cardboard cut at the very end of this. But basically, I spent like $25 on just moving boxes for this project, and it was all paid for by my Patreon supporters. So thank you guys so much. It's great not to have to spend money just to cut it up and throw it away right now.
That's dope. And yeah, big shout out to everyone who contributed. That's
it was awesome. So let's go ahead and take a look at this thing after it was all done. This is blade number 6. So we have, looks like a small spot that actually flaked out here. I think that was the spot that started to catch on the paper when I was trying to cut it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And at that point, I had to kind of call it, or else this might have done a little bit better still. We do have a couple small spots of dust again. I just wiped everything off with my t-shirt before I put it under the microscope, so that's kind of what happens. Yeah. But honestly, that was like the only major spot of deformation.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is, you can keep a clean, flat edge, like a flattened apex, right? Kind of like the 60.5 one, and not cut for very long. But, it'll look cleaner in your micrograph. But I feel like this I would prefer because, even after you can't cut paper or like, sometimes it'll catch. As for a working edge, it's going to last way longer. Like, you can still cut cardboard for much longer.
Absolutely.
So that seems more useful to me.
And it's something to note that everything obviously on a microscope looks amplified. This is something that you can't even detect by looking at it. You can kind of feel it with your fingernail a little bit, but it's not like a major dip or anything. I mean, when you think about the bevel height here, this is an 18-degree bevel. I've also forgot to say that at the beginning. All these are tested at 18 to correlate with all my other test results. When you look at the bevel height, I mean, you're talking probably a third of what a normal like Spyderco bevel would look like on a Mannix or something. That portion that's missing is so small. Like it's almost negligible.
Right. And the other interesting thing, I'm glad you mentioned that actually. So I asked Tom, because I initially sharpened one at 15 degrees per side, and I was like, wait, no, resharpen it to 18, because I wanted to be able to compare it to your other testing results.
Absolutely. Or else if I would have tested these at lower angles, obviously, in theory, these would have done better, but they don't directly correlate to what I've already tested.
Right, because my goal going into this was not only to crack 500, because, comparatively speaking, that's good, but also, like, My philosophy with custom heat treats is if I can't beat the gold standard of production heat treat, then there's no point because I'm making people pay more money and I'm putting more work into the same or lesser result. So if I can't beat Peter's heat treat, that was my thinking going in. It's like if I can't beat Peter's heat treat, I quit. So that was literally my thinking.
I do also have to say that up till this, this is the second highest knife I've ever tested for edge retention, other than Maximate. I think Maximate, even the two tests have both beat that. But that's pretty damn good. That's the only other knife I've ever had crack 500. Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Yeah, and obviously Maximate has that slight advantage in composition.
It's got a few more carbides.
Yeah.
And it's a little harder, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a wee bit.
All right, knife number 7. This one was 64.6, so another high HRC knife. I have sharpened and deburred well, but I had a few small spots with burr remaining. That could have been me. Honestly, at this point, this was blade number 4 that I had sharpened that day. Could have been me just wanting to get through things.
But you just did the same process, and then you ended at the right. Okay.
Exactly. But obviously that's dropped off fine. The edge came up super, super sticky, just like blade number 6. And I was happy with... Obviously, I don't go on and test these knives if I'm not happy with where the edge is at. If I feel any catches or anything like that in the edge. This one was 14.5 thousandths as well. You ready for this one? 569.13.
Yeah, that was going to be a good one.
Yeah, this one was really, really good. Testing both of these back to back was really annoying.
I imagine. All I'll say for this one, it's very minor changes as we're going through the high ones. What I will say for this one is I took the Ferrum Forge approach in the beginning, so a high oxidizing temperature, and then I took a little bit of a cue from Roman. So as we were talking, I was like, this sounds like a good idea, So I picked a tempering temperature. Now this one is a little bit more like on the personal, like I don't know if I should share it, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
The exact temperature. But what I will say is, it's not a super low or not a super high temperature. It's more interesting, like the way I can arrive to it. But same thing, cryo, right? And I should note this, by the way. There are theories on how long you should cryo. So some people, they just put it in cryo and they leave it overnight. They don't care. But there are some theories that if you do a shorter cryo, not too short, obviously, because then you won't be doing anything. Right. But if you do a shorter cryo, it's actually possible that you have better performance. I don't have the time to wait, the whole day and do some short ones and, test all of those because that's more blades and more time.
Right.
But I went through with that theory as well. So I don't know if that affected this or not, but I will go ahead and say that I did a shorter cryo time. I didn't leave it in overnight. Okay. So if that affected it, I don't know. I have no way of testing that yet, unless I have more time and money, right? But for now, that's what I did. So if anyone wants to test that, make sure you're doing a shorter cryo, not overnight. Just for people who want to test things out themselves. I want to make sure they're not wasting their time. So.
Absolutely. And yet another data point here that's showing that HRC is just one part of the puzzle for all this. Being
and we should talk about that,
I think we will towards the end once we see all the results together.
Right. Okay.
It's very interesting it's a 6/10 of a point lower, but it performed an extra 62 feet.
Right.
So that is now number 2 on my over all the knives I've tested to this point. So you have number 2 and number 3.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Dope.
I'm not sure if I'm going to add these to the full chart or not. I thought about it. I'm considering it. I'm not totally sure yet.
Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah.
We might. I might just add the top couple. So that's a data point in the chart that shows people you can achieve this with M390 and the analogs. Anyhow, let's pull up the picture here. This one, if you look at it, is very uniform. Obviously, a little bit of waviness going on down here in the middle. It's not quite as straight across. Some very minor microchipping across the bevel. This is kind of reminiscent of what Maximate does, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah. So I'm gonna assume that the Maximate that you tested is probably Spyderco, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I assume that when they tempered it, they were aiming for uniformity as well, which is what I was trying to do for this one, where I was aiming for like just uniform grain, like fine grain. That was pretty much the goal. So I expected the edge to be pretty uniform all across, which it is. So that's kind of interesting that it actually translated directly like that.
Yeah, this one was excellent. This is right up my alley of what I'm looking for in a knife like this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and move on to number 8 here. We have another knife at 60.5.
Mm-hmm. That was my last hurrah. I'm gonna go into that one a bit.
This one I have as easy to sharpen, but the burr was stubborn. So another one kind of like number 1, where it felt like it had some retained austenite to it. The burr just kind of hung on. Obviously, was able to deburr everything, but just took a little bit more work than normal. I have this one at 12.5 thousandths behind the edge, and this one cut 216.44 feet, which is, right in line with a lot of the production M390, just like number 1. They felt very similar.
So this one is one variation of. I basically took the Ferrum Forge protocol to its extreme, and then I added cryo. So it was my thought process of going into this before you did any of the testing, I assumed the Ferrum Forge protocol was going to fail. That was my assumption going in. But I thought to myself, is there a way theoretically that I could make it work? Like, just the thought process behind it. So I did the extremes. A slightly higher austenitizing temperature, max that I could, right? Because the thought process that he was going through was higher austenitizing temperature, higher hardness, right?
Yeah.
So did the higher austenitizing temperature, did the appropriate soak time, even though he doesn't do that, but I decided to add an appropriate soak time. Then I did cryo. So, obviously they don't do cryo for that process that they were describing in the video. I added cryo. So I was trying my best to make this work. And then I did, also a high tempering temperature, which is behind the philosophy as well of secondary hardening. All I got to say is I don't believe it. Here's what I'll say. There are 2 companies I know of. Well, I don't know if you call Ferrum Forge Brothers a company, but Maker and Company. So Ferrum Forge Brothers have done secondary hardening at times. They taught Michael Emler to do secondary hardening, and Lion Steel does secondary hardening. Those aren't the names you always want to be associated with
right.
in terms of results. So that's why I thought, it's interesting because if you look at the graphs on, I didn't think there was merit to copying exactly like a protocol from Bowler, right? Because then it's just like, it's not really that custom. It's just me doing it, but it's their protocol, right?
Right.
But in theory, they say that if you follow exactly what they do and do secondary hardening their way, you get the highest wear resistance. Now, there's a couple of interesting things to note here. So obviously, we all know Ferrum Forge Brothers came out with some videos on HRC, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things they said was you should only trust companies like what's the term, ISO or something certified companies and data sheets, industrial data sheets. They said that's the only information that they trust, right? Mm-hmm. The interesting thing to me was when I looked at their protocol video and then I looked at the data sheets, there's no data sheet supporting their protocol. So they came up with their own protocol outside of the data sheets. That was the weird thing to me. So I was like, okay, well, it's possible that the data sheets are still correct for their parameters with their temperatures, and secondary hardening does work. That's a possibility. What I will say is that with the changes that the Ferrum Forge Brothers and I think Lion Steel also made to their processes, I think they just made it worse.
Yeah. So I'm going to use an analogy here. I'm going to pull a Super Steel Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So just believing the data sheets or what the manufacturers say is like assuming that when you get your car from the manufacturer, that's the most capable it is at running at its peak performance, that a mechanic that knows what they're doing and how to tune things cannot improve on your car.
Right. That's exactly right. Because, and the funny thing is, the companies themselves that manufacture these steels, they never claim that they have the best protocol.
Right.
Like, they don't even claim that. Like, they're not going out there saying, we made this so we know best. Like, literally none of them say that. In fact, companies like Bowler literally reach out to custom knife makers who do custom heat treats and ask them for tips on heat treating.
Like Roman.
Yeah, they have literally done this. So it's like it seems to me like they know that they don't know everything about the steels that they make. And they make fantastic steels, and they do their job well,
Yeah.
right? They're very consistent. They make nice steels. The alloy combinations are theoretically interesting, but they don't claim to know everything about heat treating them,
Exactly.
right? And they shouldn't. So we shouldn't forcefully ascribe to them that, right? That level of knowledge, right? Because they don't even claim that. So.
And another thing is, these steels are used in so many different applications that there's no one heat treat that works best for all of it. M390, 204P, 20CV were all made to be in the plastics industry.
So right. But that's actually a funny point. They mentioned that, right? The Farron Forward They're like, this was made for the plastics industry. So I'm like, why would a heat treat process optimized for the plastics industry be directly translated to knives? Like, it seems like maybe we could make some improvements for knives, right?
Exactly. So they're just giving you a general heat treat of a number to hit, basically, depending on what the application is. And don't get me wrong, the numbers that they recommend, you're still getting a decent hardness for a knife, but there's always more performance you can squeeze out of this kind of stuff. Just by
and I'm sure there's things they haven't tried yet, and right. R&D is expensive. I'll say that.
And do you know how many steels they're probably working on at any given time?
Right.
So, I mean, they can only work on R&D on one of these steels for so long before they just have to put it out, make their money on it, and move on to the next.
Right, and the thing is, also like they do it like for their application, what they're selling it for, it usually does have good performance. You know, like they're probably satisfied with the performance, and they go, "This is good. We're moving on." And we're more finicky, right? We're like, no, we want max cutting performance. So it's like we're aiming for different things, so we should do different things.
Exactly. All right, moving on to blade number 9 here. This one was 64.3 HRC. I have a note here that it sharpened and deburred well. It just felt very similar to number 7, which I believe was 64.6. Another thing I did want to note was when we were talking about brittleness. I have a video up. I'm sure you already saw it. It's on my Instagram. I took that 64.6, and it was so stupid thin out at the tip.
Yeah.
When I had it on my wicked edge and I was getting my stones out to the edge, I was flexing that tip. I had to support it with my finger on the opposite side to keep it where it needed to be.
And, as you mentioned, it doesn't need to be that thin.
Right.
But I did that so that it'd be easier to sharpen because I figured if these were like 20 thou, like they're going to be more work to sharpen for Tom, especially like doing them all at once. So.
I didn't measure the behind the edge thickness at the tip. The spine thickness was 10 thousandths at the tip.
Yeah.
So the video I have on my Instagram, though, is me just taking that tip and just flexing it.
Yeah, I saw that. Dude, Adam Edge did something similar where he was like, "Oh, you said it's brittle? Flex on him." You see that one?
I did. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I still remember that though. I mean, I look at all his memes and stuff. So.
And a lot of people think that 64 is like the max range of this steel.
A lot of people think you can't even go higher than that.
I just thought it was funny.
Of course you can.
It was funny because when you told me I don't mind if you break it, I'm like, let's see if it flexes. So I put it on the table. I'm like, holy shit, dude. But
yeah,
that was just a little side note. So this one was 13 thousandths behind the edge. And this one did 289.5 feet. Good, but a little bit disappointing for being at this hardness, I thought.
Yeah, well, this one was predictable. Basically, this is max austenizing temperature, so as it helped the Roman, but coupled with a very aggressive temper, like very low temper. Okay. So it's very likely it's just not fully converted to martensite, which I expected, but I did want to see, I wanted to do everything, like every combination that I could fit into 10 blades. So this one, I kind of expected it not to do as well. I mean, I was just like, the combo of the max austenizing temperature, the highest possible austenizing temperature, and the lowest possible tempering temperature, there was a great likelihood of retained austenite and not full martensitic conversion. And not full, it's possible there's full martensitic conversion. It's most likely that the martensite isn't all tempered. Gotcha. So, whatever. I mean, I didn't expect much, but I thought it was an interesting experiment anyway. What I'm more interested in is the fact that it's still that hard. That the HRC still came out like that. But I guess the HRC can still be that high, but you just don't get the performance. So right. Yeah. Exactly.
Take a look here at the edge. Pretty uniform across the edge again. We do have a small dip, it looks like here, and a couple real tiny chips all across this backside. But other than that, very good.
I still think it's probably more brittle, just based on those extremes going on. So, like if you pushed it further, I think this would be the first one to start chipping.
Okay.
Of all the blades, probably.
Gotcha.
Probably.
So I don't have the resources for it, but I think it would be interesting to harden or toughness test these two, or impact resistance, I should say, not toughness. All right.
I wish I had some like standardized machine or something that could do that.
That'd be so cool. Instead of the bolt test.
Yeah. Good enough. It survives a bolt, whatever.
If you guys haven't seen Brian's bolt test, you need to go find it. It's very scientific, very controlled.
Oh yeah.
Anyhow, I finally arrived at blade number 10. I was very happy. So I tested blades 1 through 3 in one day before I ran out of time. I tested blades 4 through 8, and I was gonna quit for the day. And I was messaging Brian and a couple other guys on the Discord. And I sat down, I started to write the data sheet down for the data I already had. And I was like, you know what? My hands already hurt. Fuck it. Let's just go do the last
just
two.
Banged them out.
Yep. I was like, well, why do it on another day? Let's just go take care of it. So this one, obviously they were all sharpened at this point. This one was 62.5 HRC. So I really wasn't expecting, I was expecting a good result. But not quite like the 65.2 or what was the 64.6, I think was the high one. I just have notes here that it sharpened and deburred easily. So this one was 7 thousandths behind the edge, so tied for the thinnest. And this one really took me by surprise. 484.5 feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
So I told you a little bit about this one after. This one is a huge coincidence. I talked to Roman about this one, and we coincidentally tried the exact same protocol. Like, I told him this, and he's like, oh, I tried that one too. I also got 62.5, doing the exact same thing. So, obviously, anything that Roman tries is magic and works well. That's my conclusion. But yeah, so when he said that he got the same result and he had actually tried this, I was like, oh, it's going to be good. Even though it's not as high of an HRC, I was like, it's going to be good. Yeah. But to explain the thought process behind this one, max oxidizing temperature with a tempering temperature focused on uniformity of the grain.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, I mean, theoretically, it makes sense, right? Now, I had expected when I Rockwell tested this to get a higher number.
Okay.
That's what I expected. Then I got 62.5, and that's why I actually contacted Roman, because I was like, yo, why did I get such a low number? Because I thought I was going to get a bonkers number, especially because this is the last one I tested, and the other ones all lined up theoretically with what I thought I would get HRC-wise. I was like, okay, this one's probably going to be the highest, and it was 65.2. Then I tested this one, and I was like, this one's going to be even higher, right, just based on my thought process there, and it wasn't. And I was like, oh, is this going to do well? But, yeah, definitely I'm surprised and not surprised at the same time. I'll put it that way.
This one was great all around. This was a really good one.
It's probably very tough too. I'll say that.
If we tested that, I think you'd be dead on with that.
Mm-hmm. My thinking is that if you want the max cutting performance, then yeah, the 64.6 one is probably better. But if you want a little bit lower, so like 80 feet less, this one is going to be way more tough.
Yeah. So
I might offer, if I was going to pick two protocols to offer people, I would say I'd let them pick between these two. The 64.6 and the 62.5.
I was going to wait till the end. I was going to recommend you one, but I would recommend number 10.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the highest wear resistance out of all of them, it's so well balanced.
Right. It's got that toughness. And now I am still going to do the highest one just because, it's hype when things cut a lot, right? Like,
exactly.
And, some people want to just own high-performing stuff that, they don't care about the toughness as much and they don't need it. So I'm going to probably do both and just say, or I might let people pick. I don't even know. But those are the two that I would pick between is, that highest possible wear resistance or a very good mixture of exceptional wear resistance and really good toughness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those would be two excellent ones to choose from. Let's go ahead and take a look at this edge real fast. Very uniform.
Mm-hmm.
It did really, really well. No real major deformations here. Maybe one there. I could see a little wave right there. It's so tough to tell.
Yeah. It's like as you would expect from Roman, honestly.
Yep, exactly.
He has good ideas, man. He really does.
Roman's a wizard.
I expect, that did you see on Instagram, he did that reheat treated max cement native 5?
Yeah, we've already been in contact about that.
Oh, yeah, I expect that to do very well.
Yeah, we've already been in contact. One of those is going to be mine. I'm going to buy a third max cement knife for that.
Yeah, I expect that to do exceptional. Because, yes, they're very similar in HRC, but as we saw, little things make a huge difference in performance.
Yep.
And I expect him to have maximized those things. So
when he told me that Spyderco's heat treat was good, but it was only unlocking about 30% of the potential of that steel, I'm like, take my money. I want it.
Yeah.
I want it.
And here's the thing, that some companies really aren't unlocking any of the potential of the steel. Like, line steel unlocks like 10%.
Yeah, right?
Well, actually, that might even be generous because I'm not. That would be like me claiming I'm the best at M390, which I'm not, right? I've literally been heat treating for like 2 months, right? Like I have a lot of room to grow. So that means that there's probably more potential to the steel than what I have unlocked. And it's already much higher than what we've seen in production companies. So
yeah.
I mean, steels are crazy, like they have a lot of potential in them, especially high alloy steels. There's a lot of different ways you can form carbides and form different microstructures, and people just don't really care for some reason.
I know. So the last thing here is I created an Excel chart with all the data in here in order of the low HRC up to the high HRC, not necessarily correlating blade numbers because those aren't really pertinent to what we want to look at for the data. And I also created a bar graph of all that data. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for you. So on the left, we have our raw data. And then obviously over here on the right, we have our chart. So in theory, with high HRC being better, it should be a linear curve, just straight up, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, it's not like that.
Yeah.
So hardness isn't everything, is basically what you get out of this. What's really interesting is seeing 65.2 looks great on this. And then you look at 64.6, you're like, yeah, that did really good too. And then wait a second, 62.5. Well, that shouldn't be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
It was just really cool to see how all this data kind of, correlates on a graph.
My general rule for M390 based on I already made a video on this on YouTube, but it's potato quality like everything I do. But basically, what I said was HRC is a strong predictor of performance. It has two uses. So one, it's useful for a knife maker. So if I'm doing the same protocol every time, I should expect the same HRC every time. Mm-hmm. So it's good for verifying that I did my job correctly. Okay, so that's one reason why HRC is so important, right? It's actually has its most use to the company itself because it tells them that they did what they intended to do. So HRC is critically important. I think companies should test every single blade. Honestly, it's not even that much work. So that's one thing. The second thing is that it's important to customers because if you know the reputation of the company, then what you want is so let's say I know that, I don't know, let's say I know that Riot M390 at 60.5 HRC performs really well. Then every time I test a Riot blade, I want it to be 60.5 because they're doing the same thing.
Exactly.
So that's how I would look at it. The second thing is there is still a strong correlation. Now, it doesn't look like it here because these are all extremes, right?
Exactly.
These are all extremes. Now, if I do a standard protocol and I'm trying to do the same, because that's what a company is doing, right? They're trying to do the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. If I'm trying to do the same thing every time and the HRCs are differing, probably the lower HRC, actually almost always the lower HRC is going to perform worse. If you're doing the same conceptually the same thing. In addition, from 50 HRC all the way up to about 62 HRC, I would say it's pretty much linear probably. As far as HRC goes, as long as you're doing the same conceptual heat treat, you're not doing wildly different tempering temperatures or wildly different soak times. As long as you're trying to do the same thing, HRC is pretty much going to predict performance. So that would be my takeaway for what I would want people to take away from this is because I think some people are going to look at this and be like, see, HRC doesn't matter at all, and that's really not what I want to get across.
Yeah. I was probably going to make that a really clickbait title. HRC doesn't matter. It gets more people to click on it.
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting to see, how much microstructure really matters. Because that's
Exactly.
something companies, I don't know if companies even know about microstructure or if they ever check the microstructure of their steels, but it matters so much.
I'm sure they know, they
Clearly.
just don't care enough. I don't think the general public is educated enough at this point to know.
Mhm.
They see a number is very easily correlated with higher is better. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So,
Right. And you know, to some extent, it's true for production companies, I think, because most production companies, except Lion Steel, do the same protocol or they attempt the same protocol. So, you know, to the extent that like different blades get quenched at different times and there's slightly different soak times and hot and cold spots in the oven, there's going to be slightly lower HRCs and those lower HRCs are going to perform worse
mhm.
because of the way that, you know, why, because of the reason why they're low, right? Because, you know, the reason why the 64.6 is lower than the 65.2 is not because I did something wrong. Like, not because, you know, I left it in the oven too long or because I forgot to quench it quickly, you know? Like, it's because of a completely different protocol idea, right?
Yeah.
Theory. If the reason why your blade is lower hardness is because you're trying to quench as fast as you can and it was the last one in the oven, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's not a good reason to have a lower HRC. You're going to have lower performance. So, yeah. So as far as production companies go, I still think HRC is incredibly useful. I still use it. I Rockwell test all the blades that I buy for my personal knife collection because it gives me relevant information.
Exactly. I think that basically, I've said it in my M390 video a long time ago, that it's not fair to expect this kind of performance out of a production company. This isn't what you're going to get. Just because they're heat treating on such a massive scale that they can't take the care that you do of doing one or two or three blades at a time, maybe.
Right.
It's not possible.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't even think that because it's not a matter of competence; it's a matter of scale.
Yeah.
I don't think that I could heat treat like 10 blades at the same time and get, you know, good results on all of them. You know, the first few will be great, but like after that, it's going to peter down. That's why I heat treat one or two max at a time.
Yep. That's like when I got a hold of Roman today about the Maximate. He said 3 was his max.
Yeah.
So
and you know 3 is because he's more experienced.
he's God.
And he's more experienced. He has more, you know, he's quicker, right? He knows, like, you know what I mean? Like, you get quicker at doing things the more you do them.
Right.
For me, maximum I'm comfortable doing it at a time is 2. I want to get to the point where I feel comfortable doing 3 because obviously that's, you know, 50% more efficiency, right?
Right.
but I don't feel comfortable doing that yet because I can't assure the performance that Roman can assure yet. I'm still very new, and, you know, you know what I mean? Like, you're not, it takes time to get used to 2200, 2250, you know, even higher temperatures in the oven and like pulling things out and, you know, seeing your gloves steaming. It takes time to get used to that.
That's got to be terrifying.
Yeah, it's like your gloves are smoking and they're actually heat resistant gloves. It's like, oof.
That's some crazy temperature. I've burned myself out of the oven at like 450 and that was plenty.
Yeah, so like when it's getting like, you know, over 2100 degrees, like you really feel it. Like as soon as you open the oven, it's like a blast of heat.
Oh yeah.
So trying to like, and you know, can you imagine like if you like drop one or something, like you'd be like freaking out trying to pick it up. It's ruined, right? Because it's just over at that point.
I can't even imagine like it accidentally hitting like your hand.
Well, I'm wearing gloves at least. So,
yeah,
you know,
it would like
gloves,
it'd like cauterize your skin. It'd be bad.
Yeah, it would be very bad. So, but yeah, I can see 3 being reasonable if you're experienced. But yeah, I also I don't feel that experienced. Yeah, I'd probably do 2 max.
The only other thing to note here on the table is this. That is the total number of feet cut.
That's a lot of feet.
3,520.71, which is perfectly 2/3 of a mile. That is a lot of cardboard.
Yeah.
That's the most I've ever cut in such a short amount of time. I just want to. I'm not sure I can stress this enough about how much work went in on not only my end, but especially Brian's end to make this whole video a thing. I know I personally am going to have about 20 hours in this video by the time I'm done. I got like 10 or I got more than that. I got like 14 hours just in testing.
Yeah, I would say, I don't even know how many hours went into this. It's like an hour minimum grinding each blade. An hour, like, you know, taking just profiling and, you know, basically fitting it. and then the time heat treating, and
Yeah.
then it's like, and then you multiply that by 10.
And not only that, all the money that went into it. Like
Oh yeah.
the
Oh, and the ruined blades. So these 10 are not the only ones I made.
I didn't think that they were.
Yeah.
Do you have any open spots remaining in the Reblade project?
In the reblades?
Yes.
Oh, for the 940s? So basically how it works is, so I have 6 that are like, you're getting one, Steve's getting one, so 6 for YouTubers, because I want it to go out there, right? I want people to see like what high performance is like. And then after those 6, I owe one to someone because I legit like ruined his knife during a regrind. And I offered to buy him a new one, but he was so nice. He was just like, "Oh no, you don't need to like buy me a new one." So I offered to make him a new blade for his Benchmade proxy. And I also said, you know what? He was like really interested in my 940 reblades because he's like, "Oh, these are so cool." So I was like, "Oh, you know what? I'll guarantee you a spot as well." Cool. So I'm gonna make him a new blade for his proxy and guarantee him a spot on the 940 reblade. So 7 are spoken for.
Okay.
I'm gonna be making at least 50.
Okay.
The reason for that number is because I'm trying to get my license from Spyderco for the Spidey hole.
Nice.
And they were telling me that it's 50 as a limit that I can make, which, you know, if it's legal, then it's legal, right? I can't do anything about it. I'm going to try to negotiate a higher number. But at least for now, 50 is the max I can make. So I intend to make the max I can make, whether it's 50 or 100. I'll try to make as many as I can. But right now it looks like 50.
Okay.
So there will be 43 other blades that are not spoken for, which the way that I'm going to release them is going to be a variety of ways just because I want to see what works best for me. So I'm going to do some first come, first serve, some by lottery, and some I don't know yet. But that'll be the method that they're because I want to try to make it as fair as possible, and I don't know what method's the most fair yet. So
Absolutely. And seeing all these, I know these were all just rough fit blades, but I don't want to say the fit and finish because I don't know if I told you this, but I didn't even test with the washers in.
Yeah,
I just
they shouldn't fit with the washers that you have actually, because your washers that I sent you are not Benchmade washers.
Okay, I threw the blade in there and just kind of cranked down the pivot until it was like a fixed blade, and just made that was how it worked.
Yeah, so here's the exciting thing. So I've been doing it like very slowly with the disc grinder to get my fit on the one that I do have, my prototype, because that one is actually perfectly fit to the handle. Only one is, and it's not even M390, it's Damascus because I just had it lying around. I just made it, but that's the prototype. But so I know I can do it by hand, but it's more accurate to use a surface grinder. So which I'm purchasing because I do now currently have the funds to buy the surface grinder. So I'm actually shopping for one right now. I'm going to talk to the machinist tomorrow. Call them up, see what they have available, because there's so many 3-phase ones that I don't have 3-phase electricity at my house.
Yeah.
So I need to get a single-phase one or a 3-phase with converter. But I'm going to be buying that surface grinder, so that will obviously improve the exact tolerances that the blades are. So they should all be the exact same thickness.
Sweet.
So yeah, and flat. So flat's always nice.
But what I was getting at is though that even though the fit and finish maybe on the locking portion may not be perfect. The blades themselves are very, very well ground. If you guys aren't familiar with any of Brian's work, you can find him on transparentknives.com, correct?
Yeah.
As well as Transparent Knives on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
He posts a lot on Instagram and has captions that always make me laugh. If you're looking for somebody that's more down to earth and not, I don't want to say you're not super professional, because
no, I'm not professional.
You are professional in an aspect, but I also like that you're more down to earth and you don't mind joking. That's
sure, yeah, and we got knife karaoke sessions if people like those too.
Those are always good. It's something I would never do. It makes me cringe a little bit, but I laugh.
My friend calls it cringe comedy.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
But anyhow, you guys should definitely go check out Brian's work. He's done a couple regrinds for me. He's done my Super Freak and he's done my Maximate Native now. His work is excellent. He takes great care of all the knives that I've sent him. I've had now I've had probably 20 knives that you've at least did work on between the pass around knives and everything. Everything looks great. Basically, you guys need to go check out Brian's work. Give him some support on his Instagram if you're not already following him for all the work that he's put in with all of this. It's very cool and I'm flattered that you chose me to test all of these knives. I know we've been in contact since way back.
Yeah.
For almost when you first started.
Yep, actually right when I first started, yeah.
Pretty much. It's a shame because Brian used to be my little secret. He could regrind my stuff real cheap for me and do great work, and it's not so much anymore. He's doing big things.
It's busy now. It's
Yeah,
busy.
he's doing big things. He's real busy, and we'd like to keep it that way, obviously.
Yeah, and I would assume most people watching this video already follow Tom. Obviously, since you're on his YouTube channel, but I'm going to be putting this on my Instagram. Like I'll be posting that this video exists on my Instagram. So if you don't already follow Tom, you should. He does a lot of cut tests. He does reviews. He has a lot of insight into steels and the chemistry and their performance, why they perform the way they do. So it's just really cool. Tom started out as like a outdoors guy.
I did.
So he has a lot of experience, actually using knives, in addition to the scientific side. So, the more anecdotal, experiential side of just going out and using a knife, fishing and stuff, and also the sitting down and just cutting up miles of cardboard.
Yep, I use knives pretty heavily.
Right, because he does that work as well. So,
yes.
So if you're watching this and you aren't already subscribed to Tom's channel, you should. I watch all of his videos, so yeah.
I don't know how y'all do that. I got so many friends in the community now that I can't even keep up with everybody's videos. It's really annoying. Like,
I don't follow that many, actually.
Oh, I follow too many now. Now I'm like, so-and-so posted. God damn it, now I gotta go watch all those. One thing I did want to note here is Roman wanted me to retest blade number 7, that 64.6 that performed so well, to see if I can back up that result.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
I didn't test any of these twice because I don't want to cut 1.5 miles of cardboard. So, I mean, it'd be cool and everything, but the amount of cardboard that has already appeared on the screen at this point is ridiculous. It's about 4 feet wide by about 2 feet tall, probably 2, maybe 3 feet tall. It's pretty ridiculous. So I don't need to double that.
Yeah, in my terms, the way I'll probably tell people the result is this is the result of one test. I'm not going to promise every time it's going to be exactly that feat, right? Because there's variability even like when you fire up the oven, right? Just stuff like that. But I will promise it's going to perform well. Exactly. It's going to perform way above what the production standard is. Because despite little variations, there's some variability. That's not the difference between 350 Holt Spectre and 560, one of my custom heat treats. Like that level of difference doesn't come from slight variance,
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's going to perform better.
So, with wrapping this whole thing up, with all the work that both of us put in there, I think you guys should follow Brian. He also has a YouTube. I forgot to mention that. Go subscribe to him on YouTube.
If you like potatoes.
Hey, we love potatoes. Subscribe to myself and like the video if you really enjoyed it, because there was a lot of work that went into this one. And one thing I've noticed here in the very beginning of the year, only 18% of you guys have the notification bell on. So let's get that number up a little bit. See, so that way everyone is notified when I put out a new video. Man, what a cool test. It's cool to see all this, and I hope the community appreciates, I think, how valuable this data is to see all this.
Yeah, and remember, guys, Tom has a Patreon. It not only supports stuff like all the shipping that he talked about, all the cardboard that he buys, and he's not even getting compensated for time that he puts into this, to be honest. But I have carpal tunnel. I know what it feels like, and Tom's going to need some hand support, so he's going to need to buy some, ice packs and stuff for that hand. And he's cutting miles of cardboard, so Patreon this guy.
I appreciate it, Brian. The link to that is actually down in the description as well. So I'm going to put a link to the spreadsheet in the description as well, so you guys can go see that and stare at it for as long as you want to soak in all the numbers. But
yeah.
Anyhow, that's really all I got for you guys after an hour and 15 minutes here. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to see more videos just like this one, and see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.
All right. Peace.